Episode 25. "You may not see it now," said the Princess of Pure Reason, looking knowingly at Milo's puzzled face. "But whatever we learn has a purpose, and whatever we do affects everything and everyone else, if even in the tiniest way. Why, when a housefly flaps his wings, a breeze goes round the world. When a speck of dust falls to the ground, the entire planet weighs a little more. And when you stamp your foot, the earth moves slightly off its course. Whenever you laugh, gladness spreads like the ripples in a pond. And whenever you're sad, no one anywhere can be really happy. And it's much the same thing with knowledge. For whenever you learn something new, the whole world becomes that much richer. And remember also," added the Princess of Sweet Rhyme, "that many places you would like to see are just off the map, and many things you want to know are just out of sight or a little beyond your reach. But some day you'll reach them all, for what you learn today, for no reason at all, will help you discover all the wonderful secrets of tomorrow." "I think I understand," he said, still full of questions and thoughts. "But which is the most important—" At that moment, the conversation was interrupted by a far-off chopping noise. With each loud blow, the entire room and everything in it shook and rattled. Down below, on the murky peak, the demons were busily cutting the stairway loose with axes and hammers and saws. Before long, the whole thing collapsed with a tremendous crash, and the startled humbug leapt to his feet just in time to see the castle drifting slowly off into space.
"We're moving!"
he shouted, which was a fact that had already become obvious to everyone. "I think we had better leave now," said Rhyme softly, and Reason agreed with a nod.
"But how will we get down?"
groaned the humbug, looking at the wreckage below.
"There's no stairway, and we're sailing higher every minute."
"Well, time flies, doesn't it?" asked Milo.
"On many occasions,"
barked Talk, jumping eagerly to his feet.
"I'll take everyone down." "Can you carry us all?"
inquired the bug.
"For a short distance," said the dog, thoughtfully. "The princesses can ride on my back. Milo can catch hold of my tail, and you can hang on to his ankles." "But what of the castle in the air?" the bug objected,
not very pleased with the arrangement. "Let it drift away," said Rhyme, "and good riddance," added Reason, "for no matter how beautiful it seems, it's still nothing but a prison." Talk then backed up 3 steps, and with a running start bounded through the window with all his passengers, and began a long glide down. The princesses sat tall and unafraid. Milo held on as tight as he could, and the bug swung crazily like the tail on a kite. Down through the darkness they plunged to the mountains and the monsters below. Chapter 19. The Return of Rhyme and Reason. Sailing past 3 of the tallest peaks, and just over the outstretched arms of the grasping demons, they reached the ground and landed with a sudden jolt.
"Quick," urged Talk. "Follow me. We'll have to run for it."
With the princesses still on his back, he galloped down the rocky trail, and not a moment too soon. For pounding down the mountainside, in a cloud of clinging dust and a chorus of chilling shrieks, came all the loathsome creatures who choose to live in ignorance, and who had waited so very impatiently. Thick black clouds hung heavily overhead as they fled through the darkness. And Milo, looking back for just a moment, could see the awful shapes coming closer and closer. just to the left, and not very far away, were the triple demons of compromise. One tall and thin, one short and fat, and the third exactly like the other two. As always, they moved in ominous circles, for if one said here, the other said there, and the third agreed perfectly with both of them. And since they always settled their differences by doing what none of them really wanted, they rarely got anywhere at all, and neither did anyone they met. Jumping clumsily from boulder to boulder and catching hold with his cruel, curving claws was the horrible hopping hindsight, a most unpleasant fellow, whose eyes were in the rear and whose rear was out in front. He invariably leapt before he looked and never cared where he was going, as long as he knew why he shouldn't have gone to where he'd been. And most terrifying of all, directly behind, inching along like giant soft-shelled snails, with blazing eyes and wet, anxious mouths, came the gorgons of hate and malice, leaving a trail of slime behind them, and moving much more quickly than you'd think.
"Faster!" shouted Tock. "They're closing in!"
Down from the heights they raced, the humbug with one hand on his hat and the other flailing desperately in the air, Milo running as he never ran before, and the demons running just a little bit faster than that. From off on the right, his heavy, bulbous body lurching dangerously on spindly legs which barely supported him, came the overbearing know-it-all, talking continuously. A dismal demon who was mostly mouth, he was ready at a moment's notice to offer misinformation on any subject. And while he often tumbled heavily, it was never he who was hurt, but rather the unfortunate person on whom he fell. Next to him, but just a little behind, came the gross exaggeration, whose grotesque features and thoroughly unpleasant manners were hideous to see, and whose rows of wicked teeth were made only to mangle the truth. They hunted together, and were bad luck to anyone they caught. Riding along on the back of anyone who'd carry him was the threadbare Excuse, a small, pathetic figure whose clothes were worn and tattered, and who mumbled the same things again and again in a low but piercing voice.
"Well, I've been sick, but the page was torn out. I missed the bus, but no one else did it. Well, I've been sick, but the page was torn out. I missed the bus. Well, no one else did it."
He looked quite harmless and friendly, but once he grabbed on, he almost never let go. Closer and closer they came, bumping and jolting each other, clawing and snorting in their eager fury. Tock staggered along bravely with rhyme and reason. Milo's lungs now felt ready to burst as he stumbled down the trail, and the humbug was slowly falling behind. Gradually the path grew broader and more flat as it reached the bottom of the mountain and turned toward wisdom. Ahead lay light and safety, but perhaps just a bit too far away. And down came the demons from everywhere, frenzied creatures of darkness, lurching wildly toward their prey. From off in the rear, the terrible Trivium and the wobbly gelatinous giant urged them on with glee. And pounding forward with a rush came the ugly Dilemma, snorting steam and looking intently for someone to catch on the ends of his long, pointed horns, while his hoofs bit eagerly at the ground. The exhausted humbug swayed and tottered on his rubbery legs, a look of longing on his anguished face.
"I don't think I can,"
he gasped, as a jagged slash of lightning ripped open the sky and the thunder stole his words. Closer and closer the demons loomed as the desperate chase neared its end. Then, gathering themselves for one final leap, they prepared to engulf first the bug, then the boy, and lastly the dog and his 2 passengers. They rose as one and suddenly stopped, as if frozen in midair, unable to move, staring ahead in terror. Milo slowly raised his weary head, and there, in the horizon, for as far as the eye could see, stood the massed armies of wisdom, the sun glinting from their swords and shields, and their bright banners slapping proudly at the breeze. For a moment, everything was silent. Then 1,000 trumpets sounded, then 1,000 more, and like an ocean wave, the long line of horsemen advanced, slowly at first, then faster and faster, until with a gallop and a shout, which was music to Milo's ears, they swept forward toward the terrified demons.